Absolutely.
Oh, hi, everybody, and welcome to Multifamily Masters Chicago. We could not be more excited to have the Grand Poobah, the godfather of Multifamily Masters, with us today. Powell Chi has shifted his focus from multifamily acquisition to storage units now, and it's a little, the business plan is a little bit the same, a little bit different, and we're going to do a lot of diving in today on making those distinctions.
Just do a case study. We'll do a case study on
kind of a full-on case study. But
okay.
before we jump into those slides and all of those things, and I'll give you the capability to share, I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, Kevin Dugan and Brian Kokendorfer. I'm the brains, they're the beauty. See what I did there? Guys, you want to introduce yourselves? Right?
Thanks, Mandy. Good to see everybody. Seen some familiar faces, and I know we got a few more logging in shortly. So, but yeah, Brian Kokendorfer, based in Chicago. I focus on multifamily. My background is as a broker, and buy a lot of properties in the Midwest, mostly through smaller group joint ventures. So,
Kevin, tell them what's going on in your life.
What's up, everybody? Kevin Dugan from Altus Investment Group. I like to consider myself one of the OGs of multifamily masters. Back in the day when Powell was doing multifamily, since he's changed paths, has been rocking and rolling. But based out of Los Angeles, I own a company in Chicago, Altus Investment Group. We buy houses and small multifamily, renovate them, value add. We also have in-house property management, construction management. Picked up a 40 unit in Tampa, so pretty much just a professional real estate investor at this point. And love to give back and educate wherever we can.
He does all of the things, people. Don't worry. But we want to remind you that we are not your tax preparer. We are not your lawyer. This is interesting information, and we are excited to share with you our ideas, but they are just that, our ideas. Please consult someone who actually is an expert and can guide you. And with that, Powell Chi, I'm going to hand the mic over to you. I think you should be able to share your screen. Let's see the magic happen.
Sure. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mandy, Brian, and Kevin. Really excited to join this. When you guys asked me to present on storage, I was happy to. It's like when this all started with Multifamily Masters. Kevin was there in the early days. I mean, back in the day, it's all we talked about was multifamily. We've kind of since have broadened out a little bit. So, there's investors that are investing in many different things now, but Multifamily Masters is kind of where we all gathered and came together. And so today I'm going to talk about storage. I'm going to talk about self-storage, and I'm going to specifically get into a case study on my very first one, right? And it's the very first deal that I've done. And just to give you a little bit of background of who I am and what I've done. So I live in Los Angeles, but all my investments have been out of state. So I don't invest inside of California at all, whether it's multifamily or self-storage. Got involved in commercial real estate 2017, buying my first property. It was actually in Indianapolis. I know there's other people here that invest in Indianapolis as well. And you see that? See how I did that? So invested in Indianapolis, bought a property there, bought a second property on a small joint venture, and then got involved in 5 different syndications, started on a larger scale as a general partner on those. And that was all within 2021. And then when 2020, no, I'm sorry, that was all 2019. Sorry, don't mean to mix up the years here. So that was all 2017, 18, and 19. And then 2020 was coming along, and I still looking at multifamily. And what happened was COVID hit, right? COVID kind of changed my path. And with the way that I'm buying, my strategy that I'm not buying in California, I'm not buying in my backyard, I'm not buying in somewhere where I could drive 2 hours away. I don't have that specialized local knowledge that many of you might have, right? So those people who have that specialized local knowledge were able to pick up deals that other people were not able to act on. I was not personally able to act on those type of deals because I don't know those particular markets as well. Like I kind of consider the whole United States my market. So I'm not as specific as some of those people are. And those people who have that localized knowledge were able to pick up deals or able to continue and find where were the great deals that they could pick up during COVID. However, because of my strategy, I have to do a lot more research in the beginning, and I was not able to really kind of feel that it was a great strategy for me to, compete at that time. And with all the changes and unknowns and things going on like that, I decided, hey, I'm going to look at a different asset class because I'm not going to buy any multifamily for about 6 months. So let me look at a different asset class. And during this time, I said I look at storage. It's one of those asset classes that I'd always heard about, saw webinars and listened to podcasts and thought it sounded pretty cool, but I didn't know anything about it so I spent 95% of the time on multifamily, 5% on self-storage. And I kind of flipped that particular time just to understand self-storage, mostly because it was either something I wanted to do and pursue while I wasn't going to do any multifamily, or I was going to basically throw it away and say, I don't want to do this. This is not a asset class that I want to be part of, and I want to forget about it. I don't have to think about it anymore. So as I started to get into it, I started to realize that I do like it. I thought I could be successful at it. And so what I did was I took a small group of people, mostly just family, few friends, and I said, I'm going to go buy my first one. And we'll buy our first one. It'll be a small one. It'll be the one we're going to go over today. So you'll see it's a small one. It's not a huge deal. Very small, actually. But let's see if this is something that we can do and see if we can be successful at it. And if we like it, then we can start to tell other people about it. I didn't want to tell anybody that I was doing self-storage until I was in it, had it, maybe a little successful at it, and felt like there was a good path forward with it. So fast forward today, we'll get into today's specific self-storage deal, which is the first one I got. And I closed that one in January of 2021, right? So I've had it about 16 months or something like that, right? We're going to go over the first year and the first quarter of this year is really kind of where I'm getting to. And so with that all said, I will just go ahead and start, and let me share my screen here. Okay, I assume you guys can all see my screen. Okay, sounds good. Perfect. Okay, so again, this is my first self-storage deal. We can, if you got questions about how do you find it and where'd you go, that kind of stuff, we can get into that. But I'm going to really get into more of like the actual parts of the deal rather than like how I found it. But if you have questions about that, feel free to ask those questions. This was in Central City, Louisiana. Okay, which Central City is really just a part of Baton Rouge. Okay, so Baton Rouge is the capital city of Louisiana. Central City is just a portion of it. Okay, so we'll go to our.
I totally thought that was like Century City, Los Angeles.
Century City, Los Angeles. Yeah.
Like,
when you see the price, you're like, that's not Century City, Los Angeles. So it was not that.
Sure.
So just quick overview of like what we're doing. Get into the overview. Talk about the purchase and the plan that we had going together. Some images. I just wanted to throw some images in there to talk about like what's been done. Kind of like random images. The goals. We'll talk about 2021, 2022, and we'll close it out. And how much time do I have? Guys, I just want
We usually go an hour and then do an hour of networking, but whatever it is, 30 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so I don't think I'll necessarily go an hour of talking. I certainly would rather do a Q&A, but we'll get into however long this takes, and certainly want to do some Q&A after. Okay. So here's the overview. Okay, so this is the front end. You can see the picture of like our radiant storage. This is our monument sign that we put up. So this is like a newer picture that we have. But you can see look at like the list price, right? So it wasn't a big deal, right? So that's why I could do it with just a small group of people. So $775 is the list price, right? Negotiate it down to $675,000. So when I was looking at it, these were the major things, right? 20,400 square feet. It's a Class C property. Class C in storage is a little bit different than say the different classes in multifamily. but you get it as a Class C is basically, you know, drive up storage. There's probably no or limited climate control. You know, it's not a new facility, but you know, our facility was built in 1995, and I think it was renovated 2005. So their Class C properties can be a lot newer than they would be in multifamily, whereas in multifamily, something in 1995 probably would not be considered Class C. But in storage, that's kind of what it is, right? 175 units, all non-climate controlled, right? You can see from the picture a little bit that it's they're all just outdoor. We took it over as 69% physical occupancy, right? So you know it's kind of in distress right there. It's 69% physical occupancy, and it was about 65, a little below 65% economic occupancy at the time. All right, and this is one of the major, I guess, metrics that you look at for self-storage, where you don't really look at it in multifamily, is square feet per capita. So in this market, it was 4.11, which means in a 3-mile radius from around here, there is 4.11 square feet of storage per person. All right, and if you look at nationally, the sort of average of where something becomes oversupplied or undersupplied, that number is generally around 7.5. So 7.5% or 7.5 square feet per capita. If you're above that, you're generally considered you're probably in a market that has too much storage, right? And that's not a good thing if you're a storage owner. And if you're below that, then you're thinking, okay, well, there's probably more demand there for your storage units and so that's a good market to be in, right? So 4.11 was a good market to be in a 3-mile radius. But when most people look at it, they look at 3-mile and a 5-mile radius. The 5-mile radius was like 14. It's like 14, I don't know, and a half square feet per capita. So most people, when they look at it, are probably like 14 and a half on this type of property. I'm not very interested in that. It looks a little high. Okay. So some of the conditions in the plan that I was going into it. So the conditions were that the office that had office hours, and they were Monday through Friday, 1 to 4 p.m. Okay, that was the office hours when we took it over, or not when we took it over, before we took it over. Okay, they had a website, but it was not functional. So in other words, it could tell you about their place, but if you tried to click, anything like rent now, or reserve, or you want to pay, it was not functional. So you couldn't do that. So you had to go there during their office hours. They took on-site, like a lot of on-site payments, cash payments, checks, things like that. There was no tenant insurance. And as you start to get into self-storage, you start to look at what other ways can you potentially make, increase your income. Well, tenant insurance is one of the ways that you can increase your income. You make it mandatory or optional, whatever you feel like, of making the tenants have insurance, and you as the owner actually get a split of that insurance cost. So it's like a monthly cost of, say, $10. You would get a split of somewhere around $4 or $5, maybe $6 of that $10. So it's another way to sort of increase your income. Okay, and I already mentioned it was, 69% physical occupancy, right? 65% actually paying. All right, and here's what the plan was to do. Okay, so now this plan, when we look at it, we want to take it over. Our plan was to move this to an unmanned facility. So again, it had office hours, which means it had a person in the office only during those times. Now, if you're a self-storage owner, or you want to rent self-storage, and you can kind of see that having office hours only 1 to 4 on Monday through Friday probably is not the most ideal time for anybody to rent storage, right? So you already know that just going into it, if we can open this up a little bit, this will be a better way for people to have the ability to rent from you, right? So we're going to run unmanned, which nobody is in the office, and we're going to open it basically from 6 to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, right? But doing that means you have to have a professional website, right? You can't just have a website that's just non-functional. That's not going to work, right? So we have to professional website. So we had to pay significantly more than I find that I pay in multifamily properties for my website. You know, multifamily is just kind of informational, but you're not really doing much transactions on those websites, unless, I don't know, maybe you are taking some payments, but you're not bringing in new tenants necessarily through your website, like as in they could sign the lease on your website. Usually want to do that in person. We're also going to take, so we have a professional website that was going to be fully functional. That's super important, right? There's also a call center that we employ a call center to be there and be able to answer the phone from 7 to 7, I think is their hours. So 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but 7 days a week. So we're going to do that. We're going to take electronic payments only. So there is like maybe 1 or 2 people that actually do send in checks, but we've kind of tried to convert 99% of everybody else that we're taking electronic payments, no cash. Okay. You don't want to take cash because that's just not good. It's just too easy to steal. Like, oh no, these people didn't pay, or they only paid half, and somebody just pockets that money. So no cash. And let's see, we wanted to, let's see, as far as the plan, and we look at the pro forma, and we'll get into that, but it's like, we wanted to say low income and expense growth, right? We want to be conservative because, again, this is the time of COVID, right? It was just, COVID was 2020 when it started, but this is like, when we were doing our pro formas, it was in the middle of 2020 when we're generating our pro forma. So we look at the rates, and these rates where I say 61 cents, that means 61 cents per square foot, right? That's what it means. So in storage, a lot of times you're looking at what's your dollar per square foot. You have that in multifamily as well, but in general, I don't see it being used as much as it is in storage. Storage is used often, and it's used all the time to figure out your rates. So in storage, our advertised rate was 61 cents per square foot, but the market was getting about 73 cents per square foot. Now, doesn't sound like much. You're like, well, 12 cents per square foot. But I mean, we have 20,000 square feet, 20,400 square feet. You can add it up. It makes a big deal on this size of a property, right? And so the more delta you have in there of what your advertised rates are and what the market's advertised rate, obviously that is what you see as value add. And again, that's just what our advertised rates were at 61 cents a square foot. Our actual income, I think, was 55 cents a square foot, was the actuals kind of going in. All right. Economic occupancy, I talked about this. Economic occupancy, 64.5% at the time we took it over. Our plan is to get it to 85 or above. Okay. Our pro forma gets it to 85. Anything above that is just icing on the cake. All right. We plan to include tenant insurance. So tenant insurance is going to be required. So all the tenants are going to have tenant insurance, whether it's through us or through their own. We were going to require it. And there's also going to be about 2,000 square feet of parking that we can use to generate more income that the current owner was not using. Okay. This is just a barrage of images, and I just wanted to show. So, I mean, the first one is just basically just a picture of the facility. Second one is like we put up our monument sign, right? So we wanted to have a monument sign because this road that's right over here to the left of this sign is a pretty popular road. It's like one of the main roads on there. So we want to have this monument sign there. We want to have it light up as well, so it lights up as well. This kind of next picture here to the right. What I'm showing here is power washing. So you can see the difference between when we power washed versus what it looked like before, right? So you can see how it's all black and the concrete looks very dark and dirty and dingy and probably not so clean, right? After you power wash it, it can look a lot better. Now, there's some bad things to go with power washing too. I mean, it doesn't cost that much, but it sprays water. It could spray water underneath the doors. So you got to be very, very careful that you don't spray the water underneath the doors and ruin people's stuff. Here's some of the CapEx on the far right here, this drain. Some of the CapEx that we went into the deal in the beginning was that these drains didn't have these extensions on them and didn't have the bottom leg to go out to the drainage ditch. it just basically just drains straight down. So it drains straight down. It creates a big hole, and that hole goes underneath our property, or our buildings, which is obviously not good. So we had to go and kind of fix these drains, which is one of the very first things that we did. On the bottom left here, this is just kind of it's probably hard to see, but it's just sign that we put up right away, basically saying effective immediately, we no longer accept cash or any on-site payments. As of March 2021, we only accept credit card or debit payments, and then please make them here or send a check or money order to our address, right? So those signs go up right away. So, we take over the property January 2021, basically saying by March 1st. So it's basically like we give 30 days plus a little bit extra to tell everybody, hey, this is the new rule, right? This next one is just kind of like the driveway going in. It's nothing super special. We didn't even have our monument sign up there yet. Down the next one over, there's debris over here. What this is at the back of our facility was the office where we had the previous person was there for 1 to 4. Well, we demolished it. We demolished the office. It was, we were thinking maybe we can rent out the office. Maybe we can, somebody would rent it. It's just a pile of junk. It was not very nice, and I don't think anybody would really want to rent it. So we just demolished it, and instead we're putting parking. We re-fenced, we redid the fence line and put parking right where it is. And I just show this stuff as far as like other things that you need to think about here is like, there was several hurricanes, and there's probably hurricanes every year that kind of comes through Louisiana, right? And so these are things that you need to think about as far as like what happens with your insurance. Your insurance can be pretty high, but also sometimes these catastrophes that happen, if you're in a good place, like our place doesn't really, well, knock on wood, it doesn't really flood. It doesn't really, it's just in a place that doesn't really flood. We talked to people that have lived there for 20 years. I talked to the police who showed up, and we talked to them for about 20, and he's lived there for 20 years. He's all, no, this area doesn't flood. And so they've had bad floodings throughout the years, but this place never floods. And then a lot of times, if you own a storage facility and you're in a place that doesn't flood, or you're in a place that doesn't get damaged by the winds or anything like that, you become a hotspot, and you actually can see your occupancy significantly increase because of these things. Okay. I'm going to talk about this these numbers here in a second, but again, sorry, the monument sign, I don't know if that's the same one. The debris, again, the bunch of debris, but you can see here's the parking lot that we re-fenced, and all this debris was really towards this back corner. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's like right back here was where the office was. You can see the new concrete that kind of got laid where the office was before. So we re-fenced this. We're turning this into parking. We feel we got 13 spots of parking. We feel it's probably going to bring in maybe somewhere around $60 to $70 per spot per month. So you're talking, even if we get 10 of the 13 filled, we're at $600 to $700 additional a month for parking, which we did not include in our pro forma, right? So it's just extra ways to adding value. These other numbers here, I just threw this in there just because a lot of people want to talk about cost segregations, right? And for those of you who are doing cost segregations on your properties, this is from a actual cost segregation company. I probably should have actually just left their name in here. I don't know. It's TPA, a tax preparer advisor or something. I don't know, TPA, but they put out this this chart, and it basically says, when you're doing a cost segregation, you're trying to reclassify as much as possible. Like the more you can reclassify in your property, the more that you can write off in the very first year, right? So the higher reclassification numbers, the better. So when I was initially thinking about self-storage, I was like, well, apartments, I know apartments have water heaters, they have flooring, they have windows, they have, appliances, all kinds of these things that can get written off, right? Whereas my self-storage property doesn't have any of that stuff, right? There's no flooring or water heaters or appliances or any windows. There's nothing like that. So I was thinking, well, I'm probably not going to be able to write off this. There's probably not going to be able to reclassify as much as an apartment building. And so if you look on here though, it says apartment building reclassification, 15 to 40% they expect to be reclassified. In general, I see generally about like 30%. That's pretty common, 25 to 30%. But you look at self-storage down here, it's 30 to 70%. And I was like, 30 to 70%? You're saying that you can reclassify 30 to 70% of a self-storage facility versus, you know, how does that work? Because you don't have any of those, don't have any of that stuff. And just so you know, just as a curious part, this property here, when it got reclassified at over 90%. So over 90% of it got reclassified, and we were able to write off in our first year. If you have questions on that, we can talk about that later, but that's, I just thought that I'd throw that in there. Okay, so here's here we're talking about goals, right? This is what I show in our pro forma. So when I talk about to investors and I say, hey, you know, we always say, hey, if you invested 100,000, this is what you can kind of expect, all right? And this, if we did a 5-year straight sale, okay? We show this as a 5-year straight sale just for comparison's sake. We don't do it. This is not our actual strategy. Our actual strategy is not to sell in 5 years. However, it's best to compare when you're comparing another type of property. If you can just show a straight 5-year sale, no refinance in the middle of this, nothing to juice the numbers or throw, you know, kind of make magic happen with numbers. It's just a straight sale. So you look in your first year, obviously, you know, it's like 1.8%, right? Second year it ends up being about 8%. This is just cash on cash, right? Goes up, you know, 8.5 to 9% to say 9.5, almost 9.5% by year 5, basically doubling like a 2x multiple in 5 years. Okay, and this is what we project on our pro forma. So this is what we're showing to people, right? Obviously, your first year takeover is kind of the tougher year, and then it starts to get better after that. Right? But let's go. Okay, so I will show you here. This is our actual. I actually had my assistant here redo this for us so that I could put this on our PowerPoint here. But these are the numbers that we had showing in our pro forma for this deal. Okay, so this is what I actually showed people who were in the deal, right? So if you look as the columns, can't really see my cursor. This is the current property, right? And I feel it's important to always show what the property is doing currently when you buy it. Okay, because if you don't show this, I feel it's like you have no baseline to know whether it's good or not. You know, if you just look at year 1 to 5, you have no idea what the current year is, and you don't know if you actually made any improvement or how much improvement are you saying. So just to go down the line here of I'll start at the top, right? Income growth and expense growth. So we show 0% in our first year. We show 2% of both income and expense in our second year, and then goes up to 2.5, 2.5, 2.5 for the remaining year 3, 4, and 5. We show this number right here, which just says 0.73, which is the 73 cents per square foot is what the market advertised rent is for the market. Right down here, where it shows advertised monthly rent for us is 61 cents. So we're saying our property is getting 61 cents. We're not showing any like increase towards the market level yet. Okay, so we're not saying like, so the market is getting 73 cents a square foot. We're not saying, hey, we're going to get 73 cents a square foot. We just kept it at its current level. All right. So obviously, are we going to want to get to that level? Sure. Are we going to actually want to be there or even pass it? Are we going to raise our rent? Yes, of course we're going to. However, in our pro forma, we're just not showing that. We're not saying that. We're just saying we're keeping it at the level that it's at. Right. So this is all efforts in a way to be as conservative as possible. As you go down here, you can look at like the total expense, and you can look at the expense ratio. So year 1, it's running at a 58.8 was what we said. So currently they are running at 50.6 expense ratio, right? And we said we were going to run in the first year at 58.8. So we're actually increasing the expenses our first year compared to the seller, right? Then we start to have a decline in year 2, 3, 4, and 5. But we're saying we'd increase it in our first year. All right. I mean, the rest of these, you know, those are just some of the highlight of these numbers, and it's kind of a eye chart to look at. But just wanted to give you an example of what we are showing to our people. Okay. So after 12 months of ownership, okay, so this is all 2021. This is only 2021. Okay. And it's not really 12 months because we bought it in January. So it's not really January. We didn't really include January in there. So it's really 11 months of ownership. And then I had to annualize it. So I had to divide our number by 11 and then actually get, then times it by 12 to show you what our numbers were. But our forecast, right? We're forecasting 114,000 for net income. We're forecasting, right? So basically on the chart right before here, this is what we're showing: $67,000 as net expenses, NOIs 47,000, cash on cash 1.80. Okay, what was our actual? All right. If you look at it, the numbers are pretty close. Pretty much this, they're within $1,000 of each other, right? So our income is right there, our expenses are right there, our NOI is right there, and our cash on cash. So we're right about at our numbers that we forecasted, right? So I guess I should have prefaced this by saying, hey, I didn't want to come out and just be like, hey, I could just show them a bunch of things and make me look good, right? That's not really what I want to do. I want to be honest and just show you like, hey, in your first deal, this is what our first deal looks like. Is this our best deal? No, it's not our best deal. It's probably one of like our second to worst deal, but I won't say that, but it's not performing as well as some of our other deals are. But this is I've held this property the longest. So I wanted to give you the actual numbers to see what it looks like. So if you look, we're pretty close to where we are after the first 12 months, what we expected to be, right? So our investors, can be confident to know that at least this is what we said we were going to do. Okay, and then we look at our Q1. I'm going to fast forward to Q1 of 2020 because we just did 2022. We just did this, right? So we're talking January, February, March of just 2022. So again, forecast 35,000, a little over 35,000, net expense a little almost 17,000, NOI 20,000, cash on cash 8.0. Okay, actual, where are we at actually? Net income 33.9, right? So a little bit below on our net income. We're not collecting quite as much as we projected right there. Our net expense is significantly lower. You're almost $4.5 thousand lower on our expenses, which is good. Which gets our NOI basically like, we're still a little bit below. We're about $2,000 below in our NOI. Cash on cash 7%, so we're a little bit lower than what we projected for our for 2022, right? But some of the things that I put in here at the very bottom, I mentioned the parking. The parking hasn't started yet, so we got it fenced in. We just got it striped, but now we can start to rent out those parking spaces. So that should turn into $600 to $700 a month extra, right? So that's going to help us increase our income, our NOI. That'll be good. Our current occupancy right now, we're at 83% physical occupancy, and we're heading into the prime months. So right now it's actually the prime months of peak renter season. So although we're not quite where we want to be on our Q1, it's also like you got to figure your Q1. There's a big jump in cash on cash from year one to year two, right? So this is year one, cash on cash. We're looking at 1.8. Year two, we're looking at 8.0, right? So there's a big jump in cash on cash, and there's a big jump in what we need to do in year two. So we're getting there, but we're also at the very beginning of year two, right? So maybe by Q4, hopefully our numbers will be above forecast, and we can at least kind of, so that's where we are right now. So we're obviously trying to hit above forecast for for the following quarters. There are some additional ways that we can obviously increase our property. We're not at stabilization yet. Stabilization is at 85% occupancy, and obviously, well, not obviously, but storage facilities should be running at about 92% occupancy. Okay, so we certainly have room to grow, a lot of room to grow, and we feel good that our expenses are significantly lower than what we forecasted. Okay, And hopefully this gives you kind of an honest look of where we're at. But that's it. That's it as far as bringing you up to date. This is me. If you're interested in what we do at self-storage, you can reach out to me. We do have 8 properties now. We're in 5 different states. We have over 250,000 square feet of properties, 2,000 units. Our latest close was actually just yesterday. So we just closed a property yesterday in Connecticut. Also 350 unit one. And typically nowadays I do joint ventures, and I think it leads to better hands-on experience for everybody. So we have some, we're the type of people that are interested in helping people learn, helping people get experience in this field. And if that's somebody that's like you, feel free to reach out to me. There's my QR code, and that is it. I'll stop here.
Very cool. We have a bunch of very well-informed questions here in the chat. So I will just go ahead and read them off and give us your best answer here. So sure. Other than brokers, what is a good independent source to get the square foot per capita? Just the generally speaking in a market, the square foot per capita.
A lot of times when you're looking at square foot per capita, okay, so you're really gonna have to do this manually, which means you're going to go to Google Maps and you're going to sit there and calculate out each property that has self-storage. Draw a map where there's 3 miles and start looking at where the self-storage facilities are and start drawing out, how big is this building? Like Google can help you, and Google Earth can help you figure out how big is this actual building, right? You can look at the square feet and then you get the population. Okay, that's the hands-on manual way, free way to do it. The paid way to do it is there's companies out there that you can pay them and they will give you that number.
Name us a couple companies that you've used or know to be reputable.
Sure. Probably the 2 biggest ones that I see that specifically do with self-storage are StoreTrack, okay, STORTRACK, StoreTrack, and Radius Plus. Okay, Radius Plus. Awesome. 2 big ones. They do have, so they do cost money, or they have some free trials and things like that you can kind of sign up for. But if you're trying to find out what is the square foot per capita in 10 different markets, well, you're gonna be over your free trial, right? So then you got to pay for that stuff.
How'd you find this deal?
So through brokers, right? So all of my deals have been done through brokers. Typically, there's 2 ways to find a deal. It's you got to find it by yourself, which means like a lot of you have tried. Sending out letters, calling people, whatever it is, kind of direct to seller, drive by, you can do that. I don't do that because, again, I live in Los Angeles and these are properties that we're looking all over the United States for. And so if they tell me, yeah, I'm interested in selling, but I need you to come down here and take a look at my property. Well, I'm like, am I going to fly out there just to look at a property that they might be interested in selling? And I don't even know what the price they want to sell. Like that's not me. So I don't do any direct to seller marketing.
So are these the same brokers? Like what type of, if we are ostensibly, many of the people who have joined us today come to us with a background in multifamily investment, right? It's not my same guy that I go to that knows I like 50 unit buildings in Indianapolis. What is the qualification and how do you find that broker for storage?
Yeah, so they will be specific self-storage, maybe warehouse, right? But they will probably be a self-storage broker. Okay. So if you look online and you look for, self-storage broker, or if you go to like a lot of the big brokerages, right? Like you guys probably all know Marcus and Millichap, right? So Marcus and Millichap has their own self-storage wing, right? So they, you can just kind of search on their website and self-storage, and there's going to be a bunch of brokers that only do self-storage, right? And then you're also looking for smaller boutique ones. You're also looking for other big ones, Cushman and Wakefield, whatever, those big ones, they'll have their own brokers that only do self-storage.
Great. I'm not sure I understand this one, John, so correct me. Did you buy the storage using current revenue or pay above the amount? I believe the purchase price was what, $675, and you're buying the entire business.
Yeah, so you're buying the whole business in the real estate. So it's so the purchase price was $675. Go ahead, John. Did you have a follow-up?
Oh, I was going to clarify that. So what I was asking is, did you buy it based off of the current value of the real estate and the revenue, or did you have to pay any type of premium to get that property?
So I bought it off the revenue, but considering, you buy it as much off the revenue as possible. But there.
Oops. Hey, Paul, you went on mute on accidentally. Sorry.
Oops.
There
Okay.
you go. My bad. You bite off as
Sure.
much revenue as possible is the last thing.
Yeah. You're trying to buy off as much, trying to buy off the revenue as much as possible, right? Like cap rates and things like that, right? But if you look at this deal and say, well, if you're at 65% economic occupancy,
Mhm.
you probably have, you still are running at 50% expenses, right? So what is your actual NOI on this deal? It's probably like, $5,000 or $10,000. So if I went off a cap rate, this property should only be worth $25,000, right?
Right.
And that's not going to work. You're not going to offer $25,000 for the property and get this accepted. So
Sounds a lot like multifamily in that way, right? Like you've got to normalize what your projections, what you're going to be able to make from the property in your assumptions with the underwriting. What are best lending sources for this asset class?
yeah, so that was the biggest hurdle that I had to go through, was the lending side. And I thought it was going to be the easiest. Lending, I thought it was, I knew a bunch of lenders and mortgage lenders and everything. I thought it was going to be super easy. I understood lending, but it was the hardest. So what are the best ones? I don't know which necessarily are the best ones, but there are many ones, right? So if you're getting a smaller property like this, under $1 million loan amount, similar to multifamily, you're probably going to have to go to a bank, credit union, somebody like that. Over that amount, there's no Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Okay, so that's only in residential, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. But there are comparables, which is like CMBS, life insurance companies, and debt funds will actually be your lenders, kind of like a comparable to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac.
Right. So those CMBS and insurance companies lend on both multifamily and in storage deals.
Yes, I don't think life insurance do multifamily. Do they?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen any, but okay. So
But
maybe
it's
they
more
do
institutional, the bigger Grant Cardone style stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, and just so you know, too, SBA is also fairly attractive to a lot of storage owners. It's like you can get an SBA loan. So that's, Small Business Administration, and the Small Business Administration will lend up to 90%. So you can actually get up to 90% lend for a self-storage facility.
Does this have to be your primary business to qualify for SBA though, or no?
Does it have to be your personal primary business?
Yeah.
Is that what the question was?
Yeah, like an owner occupied type business.
I don't know if it has to be that. Truthfully, I haven't gone down the road of SBA. It usually takes a little bit longer, and I started to do the process. I didn't go through that with this deal. Just so you know, on this deal, I did a private lender. So I basically had a private lender who was like, Paul, I like what you're doing. I like the property involved. I'll just lend you the whole thing, because the banks, the SBA was too small for any of the big guys. It was just like kind of a headache. So I just had a private lender.
I did kind of go down the rabbit hole on SBA when I wanted to buy a laundromat. The fees were really significant. I don't know if it was because of the asset class I was in, but if you want to understand SBA, it's super attractive because you can borrow a very high percentage, but the fees were so significantly higher by comparison when it came to real estate stuff. So what qualifications do you look for? Is the next question, right?
I guess I'm not sure. Qualifications on the property, or qualifications on my friends, or qualifications
on a boba.
Yeah, I know the property. So I mean, for me, I'm looking at, it needs to have a value add, significant value add. Okay, in the four areas of value add that I need to have are expansion, right? Does it have some type of expansion possibilities?
It's talking lending specific in turn when it comes to the loan stuff.
Oh, the loan.
What are qualifications of the borrower? I'm guessing.
Qualifications of the borrower. Okay, so they're very okay. So in multifamily, because you have Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, who are very standardized, right? 10% of the loan amount. You got to have this much in equity and all that kind of. You need to have those, and it's pretty standard. Well, when you're dealing with bunch of different organizations that are all not standard, it's all around the same, but nothing is standardized, right? So like they don't tell you, well, you need to have, everybody says, all the banks say 10% of the loan amount and liquidity, or it's just kind of like, well, you just need to have enough, or you just need to have enough net worth. And so what does that mean?
Right.
There's no standard amount, right? So you
It
just try to
kind of-
gauge
Sorry.
multifamily, and then try to use multifamily as a guideline, and then
Yeah.
usually
Well, it kind of sounds like that because, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are government backed, you have to fit into a pretty little box. And as
Mhm.
soon as you don't have to fit into a pretty little box, it becomes the Wild West. So for all intents and purposes, lending on something that is not government backed becomes the Wild West. So let's talk a little bit about reclassification. So when it comes to the cost segregation, when you mean reclassification, what I understand, I haven't heard it called this, so forgive me if this is a dumb question, but that's something that then means that whatever that cost was gets basically thrown out for that year. It's one of the buckets that's depreciable in year one.
So how they say reclassification, this is how I understand it, right? Is that when you do a multifamily property, your whole property is going to be depreciated 27 and a half years, over 27 and a half years, right? Instead, what they're going to reclassify some of those parts to be able to be at a 15-year depreciation schedule,
Right.
10-year, or a 5-year. So any of those are considered reclassification, and because of the bonus depreciation, you can take it all into one.
Right.
Right. So the more that you can say we can reclassify our property, higher percentage, the more you're saying it's not 27 and a half years for multifamily. It's actually, a bunch of them are 15 years, 5 years, 10 years. Same with storage, right? The more that you can reclassify, the more that you can bump into the first year and reclassify it into year one.
Put it in the
take the bonus
shorter
depreciation.
depreciable bucket.
Mhm.
Very cool. How do John Abraham, I'm guessing, sir, that you will be buying a storage facility in the next 6 months based off of the caliber of your questions. I am here to tell you. How are property taxes compared to residential?
I would say they're pretty high too. You face.
Similar?
Yeah, I would say similar.
So
right?
on your $675 purchase price in the state of Louisiana, what were at acquisition, or did they reclassify at the time of purchase?
Did they increase it? Yes, but it wasn't that much. So again, Louisiana being a super low state in terms of state taxes or property taxes, I think our property tax for that property is $11,000 a year.
Okay. How did you deal with non-paying tenants?
No, that's the best part of it. That's the best part. No, that's not the best part. It is one of the, I guess, advantageous parts to what I see against multifamily, right? When you compare multifamily and storage, right? In multifamily, you go through an eviction process, right? An eviction is basically the laws are there to prevent, people get thrown out on the street for the wrong reason, right? In storage, you're under the, I guess, jurisdiction of lien laws, and lien laws are more about people's stuff, right? And most people, I would say, in America probably believe that if you have stuff, I have the stuff, I don't get to just put it on somebody else's property and not pay for it. And they get to remove it if they want to, right? I mean, most people feel that's reasonable. So you basically, if people don't pay on day 5, what we do is we put a lock on there. It's called an overlock, right? We put a lock on their gate, on their door, and we shut them out of the gate. And so if they come in, they have to call into our call center and say, hey, my gate code doesn't work. And it's like, oh, I think it's actually because you're late on your payments.
Yeah.
And as soon as you want to pay, then you can go ahead and we'll give you a code and we'll unlock that overlock on you, right? You can't do that in multifamily. You can't just go and lock their door on day 6, right? You can't just go, boom, you can't go into your house on day 6 or your apartment on day 6. And so we get to do that, and it goes then to auction. So maybe if you've seen Storage Wars or those kind of shows, it goes to auction, right? And if nobody, basically the auction, if it clears $200, the first $200 will go to you personally as the owner, pay for all your expenses. Anything left over goes to the previous renter.
Got it. When you're underwriting these deals, talk to us a little bit about the CapEx funds that you set to the side. What are some things that you're trying to gauge? Because I'm certain that every building is different. If it's a newer construction, you're not putting aside stuff for the roof, like John's asking here.
Yeah.
But if it's an older one, tell me just some items that you look for CapEx.
Yeah, so I mean, you're going to look for a lot of the same in multifamily, right? So some of it's the roof is going to be an important one, right? The concrete, you know, whether or not you need to repatch some of the concrete is going to be an important one. Signage is going to be something that you want. Probably security. So you might need to upgrade your security system, right? Your website, which you don't really think of as a physical thing, but it's really important to have to put money towards the CapEx of your website, really, to build that website, right? You know, you're going to want to pretty it up as much as you can, right? So some people want to go in there and want to paint the new, you know, paint the whole facility, or they want to, you know, recoat the facility. There's a bunch of different things you can do. On a Class C property, I'm not really interested in doing all of that, right? You know, you're just not, your rents aren't high enough to really to do all of that. You just want to make it safe. You want to make it clean, and you want to make it like kind of lit up at night, so that it's, you know, as safe as possible.
What states do you have assets in? Storage assets?
Yeah, so I have 2 in Louisiana, I have 3 in Mississippi, I have 1 in Alabama, 1 in Texas, and the most recent close was Connecticut.
Cool. One thing too on the CapEx while we're still on it. I did learn from, I got to go on a site visit for a new acquisition for a friend who was buying something here in the south suburbs of Chicago. And she was talking about the runoff requirements. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you're mitigating that runoff requirement, the water runoff requirements in some of these?
Oh, okay. At first I wasn't sure if you meant water or not, but yeah. So in pretty much any builds nowadays, right, you need to have water detention, right? They don't want you just water to go straight into the city water lines, right? Because that's just, it's going to flood. It's too much to have everybody do that. So on your properties, and even in multifamily, you have these, but they just make them look nice, right? Make them look like a little pond or whatever. But in storage, I mean, nobody cares about a little pond. It just ends up being a ditch with water, where all the water goes to first before it kind of overflows into the city line. So these are called water detention ponds. And you need to plan to have those. It's almost mandatory across the whole United States that you have those and you have enough of them. And so when you buy, hey, I bought 4 acres. Well, guess what? A portion of that is probably going to go to water detention. And where are you going to put it? Are you going to put it in the back? Are you going to put it in the front? There's sort of other ways to sort of mitigate things. But water detention becomes a big thing because that's land you cannot use to put storage on unless you have one of these more kind of gravelly, you know, weird kind of like soil mix type of solutions. So
okay. Whenever they were going to add storage units, that's something that they continually ran into. Okay, so please also discuss tell us your criteria. What are you looking for when you're going to go after a new asset?
So the value add part of it that I was talking about.
Yep.
So we're looking at, I want to have a significant value add in the property, right? Significant value add. And I was looking for expansion, which is one of them, right? So obviously the ability to expand the property. Second one is say low rents, right? That's something you're looking for, low rents, right? And you're looking for a market where the advertised rents of all your competitors is pretty high and yours is pretty low, right? And just like you're looking at multifamily. I'm also looking at low occupancy, right? So just like this property, took it over at 65% physical occupancy. That's pretty low. So that's something that I feel that we can operate better than the current owner, and we can get the, you know, as long as there's the demand, you know, you look at, is there the demand available? And let me see, what was the fourth thing? Occupancy rent. Blanking on it right now. I got to think. I'll come back to it. I'm sorry, I'll come back to what was my fourth thing, because it's low occupancy, low rent.
Is it could have something to do with the insurance? I think that's a really great idea.
Oh, I know it. It's similar. It's operational inefficiencies, right? It's like you saw how my expenses in year 2 are significantly lower than what the current owner had and how they were operating, right? So expenses wise, that you can reduce the expenses significantly compared to what the previous owner was doing, right? Those are the main operational things.
What insurance companies do you go through?
Insurance. there are specific insurance companies that just do storage or that are very, very good with storage. You'll want to find an insurance broker who does specifically, like they handle storage. But Minico is a pretty popular one. So I don't know, Minico. We have a broker, and basically they go and they find, you know, six different policies, and we choose whichever one's best, right? So we use a broker.
There's a group called Risk Release that does this same sort of application for multifamily. We're going to look to have him at one of our subsequent meetups here. Can you explain why your NOI kept getting lower if not covered by CapEx? What other unforeseeables were involved?
Let's see. Okay, on this property, one of the main things that we were not increasing. We were not increasing as fast as we thought the occupancy. Right? It was like slower than we thought. And one of the main reasons that we found out, we've been very keen on this now, is that most people, when they are looking for storage facilities, where are they going to look? Right? They're going to look on Google. Yeah. Right? And so you need to have your Google presence, and it needs to be very good, and it needs to be as high as possibly ranked. Right? So our initial issue was that we were taking it over from a previous owner. They had a Google My Business, right? We wanted to transfer it to us. Well, he didn't know who did it and set it up for him. It's like an email that he didn't really use. And so we couldn't figure out a way to get him to transfer it to us. So we created a new one, and we were like, this is ours. And then Google was like, wait a minute, there's already one there. Like, we don't want. And so Google kind of basically shut ours down. It's like, no, there's already one there. So now we're kind of fighting Google. And it's kind of like, you're trying to call Google. It's like, who are you calling on Google, right? It's like, it's not like they have a face where you can just like talk to some rep. So you have all these issues of like trying to get this all done. And because you know that your Google My Business is super important. Right. So we suffered a long time through having this process. We had to eventually like send people on site to take pictures of them on site, like selfies on them with them on site with our signage like in the background, and then it had to go through approvals to Google, and it was just like a long process. And I don't know, enough said, it's an issue. Like, so make sure your Google presence is super important on that, right? So that was probably the main thing of why we didn't increase our occupancy as fast as we'd like. Now, I will tell you this. Even though it's not as fast as we'd like, it is about where we are projected, right? We just think we can do better than we project, right? We're trying to like say, hey, this is where we're projecting, where we think we can do better, but it is in line with where we're projecting.
Property management company, are you using one? Or do you have an employee that's managing lockout codes?
No, we use a third-party property manager. We're focused right now on growth, right? We're not focused on the operational, things that we can kind of clean up here and there. We're really focused on growth. So what we want to do is hire a third-party property manager for them to take care of that, and work with them as much as possible. And then for us, we just focus on actually going out and getting more properties.
Are you building from scratch anything, or you're just acquiring in-place assets?
No, I get this question a lot, and I get a lot of topics on this about like, hey, Powell, what about building? Truthfully, like development, I feel like my background in multifamily is buying existing properties, right? Negotiating, buying, finding them, and operating them. That's really what I'm doing in storage as well. Finding existing properties, operating them, running them, and doing that. But building from the ground up is like a whole nother asset class. Yeah. And it's like, you got to go through entitlements and, all this stuff that's very, very different. The loans are different, and because that's all different, even though it's self-storage or, self-storage development versus self-storage existing, to me, it's not where I want to focus my time. And so in 2022, right now, we basically said, we're not going to do any development deals. And so we basically turned down all development deals. It's just because that's not our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is finding existing properties. And so maybe in the future, I'm sure in the future we'll look at developing, but right now it's existing properties. So
an idea that might help. So that site visit that I went on, their big value add strategy, there was of the parking spots, they put not travel spaces, but places that weren't non-permanent places. And then that did not require them to have an additional retention need, right? And then they were able to have equal sized additional units from it. So I don't know if that could be helpful. And it's just you're bringing on these pods basically that are pre-existing.
They call them portable units.
Portable, there's my word.
There's companies out there that do portable units. So you can buy basically these boxes and then they'll erect them. You can put them, the nice thing is you can put them in these odd places, right? Because you can't build right around the corner, or, it's like shaped kind of weird, your property. Well, you can put these pods all over the place and just kind of where you want. And they can fit in these locations that, you
and
can
it doesn't mess with it's non-permanent, right? So it doesn't mess with your property tax, whatever. So we're at the top of the hour here. Guys, in the chat, if you don't mind, if you want to, we could either run through the rest of these, or we could move over to networking, or if we could keep doing these and we could skip networking. Somebody in the chat, please give me what your vote is, and we will do whatever your vote is. First guy, finished Q&A. Awesome. That guy, I know him. Awesome. Okay, well, let's go through here. Minimum square foot.
Is there a bunch, Joseph? You want me to just burn through them, or you want the?
No, we're good. I feel like this is super valuable. This is different from what we normally do. Like, let's minimum square foot size or unit number you're looking for.
So when I started out, the minimum size was 20,000 square feet. All right, and in self-storage, you're looking at more square feet than you are looking at per units, right? The units is more multifamily. So 20,000 square feet was what I was looking for. Now it's probably like 35,000 square feet is probably our minimum, somewhere around 35,000. So our latest one we bought was 35,000 square feet. So yeah, I've kind of increased that amount, looking to go a little bit bigger.
So over these brand name storage companies, what is your competitive advantage?
So, okay, there's a difference. So those are a lot of times you're talking about the big REITs, right? Public storage, Cube Smart, Extra Space, Life Storage. Those are all big REITs, and they're public companies. And oftentimes you feel like they're competitive and you don't want to necessarily compete with them. But you are glad that they're in your market, because a lot of times they drive up the rates significantly, right? Now, if they're going to be building a brand new one next to you, it might not be the best for you, because they are maybe going to have the rates decrease a lot in the very beginning while they're leasing up. But eventually, when they get filled, they're going to increase their rates significantly. Now, what's the sort of differences and then I guess competitive advantage versus somebody like that, right? Operationally, we don't operate like they do. So I mentioned that we are unmanned, right? Most of them are all manned. So when you're talking about payroll costs, their payroll costs are significantly higher than our payroll costs. Yeah, we do have payroll because we have a person who goes and does maintenance, things like that, but he's not customer facing, right? So our payroll costs are significantly lower than they are. Their advertising costs, their advertising budget is way higher than ours is. So we would never really be able to compete with them on an advertising scale. They just have a lot more scale, right, than we do. So in ways, we're trying to cut our expenses down significantly from what they are, right? And we're trying to offer a similar product. We're not necessarily, they are the top of, we're not necessarily trying to beat their rates, right? If you look at that property that I just had, Class C property versus like the Life Storage that's there, it's not really competitive, right? That Life Storage is climate controlled. It is like it built like 3 years ago, that type of thing. Our Class C property is not meant to compete with that property. Our Class A property, they are meant to compete with that type of property, right? And so when you have something that's more of comparable, supposed to be competing with that property, then it's like, okay, how are we differing ourselves? Operationally, we're doing things a little different. We also offer some of the things like there's something we call it Storage Defender, but we have this option of putting in this like little unit inside of everybody's unit. It's a little black box, and it monitors like motion, it monitors heat signatures. So if somebody comes into somebody's storage unit, they'll get a text message. The owner will get the renter will get a text message saying, "Are you in the unit?" And they can say yes, and then it'll just clear out, or they'll say no, and it'll go to like somebody else. It'll go to like their next person in line. But it's basically monitoring their storage stuff so that they'll get an alert right away if if there's somebody like in their unit. Right?
Very cool. Any experience with conversion? Like, did you convert anything into storage, or again, you're just buying in place assets?
I would say in place all right now, nothing converted yet. Although that is probably on the docket sooner than later. If you ask me, maybe in 6 months, you
ask them in 6 months.
Yeah, you might have a different answer.
Let's talk about other KPIs aside from storage per capita that you use to gauge demand in the market.
Okay. Well, there's certain things that you're going to want to look at is like square foot, dollar per square foot, right? What is the cost per square foot? Because this is going to help you decide if there's going to be competitors coming into your market, right? If the cost that you're buying at is below somebody building, then you feel like, hey, the likelihood of them coming in and building is probably not as high, right? There's some barriers to entry. The thing with self-storage is that the competition is really your main threat, having too much competition. So you want to have these barriers to entry. So if you can buy a property that is below replacement costs or below build cost, I mean, that's something to look at. So with this property, you're looking at, say, $675,000 is what we paid for it. You divide by square foot, which is 20,000 square feet. You get below $40 a square foot. Now, are you going to be able to buy a lot, entitle it, build on it for less than $40 a square foot? Probably not. I
think that's excellent advice for any type of real estate investing. Frankly, if you can buy below replacement cost, you've got a margin of safety. It's a very Graham value investor type of an ideal there, Powell Chi. Awesome. We have now exhausted the list of questions from the chat. My esteemed co-host, do either of you have any questions for Powell?
Yeah, I had a couple questions, Powell. Thanks for that quick master class on self-storage. I feel like you just drop bombs all day long. So sure. Keep up the great work, man. Right now, I want to give you a little bit of an opportunity to like kind of pump your deals in the sense of like, what are you projecting for investor returns on some of the most recent joint ventures?
Yeah. So typically what we're doing now is that, how do I say this? Like our strategy, like I mentioned, is not to do a 5-year straight sale, right? We're not trying to do a 2x multiple and sell in 5 years. Our strategy is to refinance in probably year after year 3 or 4, somewhere around year 3 or 4, is to refinance this property and then return 100% of our investors' capital, right, at that particular point. And then we will hold on to it for probably like 5-year segments, right, where we'll refinance after another 5 years or so. Hold on to it for a longer term, basically.
Cool.
So that all said, that's a lot better, I think, for our investors to be able to get some cash flow in year 1, year 2, year 3, and then be able to get 100% of their investors, their capital back. Now they can invest that capital into a separate deal. So that's like, hey, you're already in Powell's deal. You can do another one of Powell's deal, or you can do in Kevin's deal. You can do Mandy or Brian's deal. You can put that 100,000 or whatever into a separate deal. You're kind of making money on 2 different sides, right? And the more that you're able to do that, the better. Now, all of our deals, we project that we're going to be doing this in, say, that 3 to 4 year period. And that's where I say we need significant value add. I consider that a home run deal. So when I say I want a home run deal, that's something that I can refinance in that period. And that was one of the main reasons of the shift from multifamily to storage, was I was not seeing home run deals. And this is just me personally. I was not seeing them. And if you're not seeing them, I was just a little hesitant to get into the side of the deals that I was seeing, which I felt were like singles, and I was like, I just don't want a single when COVID's coming up. So
yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at, Kevin, is that we're trying to do that refinance strategy.
So pretty much an infinite return. Like the way I see it is like
Yep.
you take out all your initial equity and you still got the cash flow. And on top of it, sounds like there's some pretty heavy, depreciation factors with the accelerated depreciation plus the refinance. So it's pretty awesome.
In my latest deal, just so you know, this one, we kind of structured a little bit different. This Connecticut deal that we just closed yesterday, but that one, there's over 100%, 100% depreciation for anybody's investment. So if whatever they invested, they'll get it more than 100% back in the first year, and that's for all of our investors. And so,
is that because you have like self-directed funds going into it, or?
We have certain funds that are going in that don't need it, and so they don't need the depreciation. So everybody else can take advantage of it.
That's incredible. Another way that I want you to discuss some of the benefits, like you mentioned a lot about joint ventures, really critical when you have buy-in from different partners. How are you structuring those deals right now, and how are you finding your joint venture partners?
So typically I just have people reach out to me. So if anybody's interested, they just reach out to me. I have a Google form that I ask people to fill out, and everybody that's filled out that form is considered my sort of priority list. And that's the list that I send out to at first to say, hey, I'm getting pretty close to on a deal. I just want to check if anybody is interested in getting in on this and on this JV. Those are how I fill the slots. Other than that, I also do know people that have told me multiple times that, hey, I'm very, very interested on your next deal. So I'll reach out to those people that I know personally. But again, it's not a lot. I don't have that many people in their deals, so we don't. All of my deals have been filled by that list, and that list is not very big. And so it's I guess that's where I find them.
That's awesome.
I also, it's probably like you too, Kevin, is that you want to work with people who you know and you like, right? So I'm not just taking when I syndicate a deal, so I syndicate one of my deals, yes, we're just here, we're gonna syndicate this, and anybody that we know, we're gonna be able to take raise capital from. But when it's a joint venture and it's a small team of people, right? It's like I don't really want to take it from. I don't want to do it with people who I don't like, right? I want to do it with people who I like. So I reach out to people who are on my list, but people that I really like, and I want them to, be part of this team.
And here we are back at the criteria for what it takes to be Powell's friend. Full circle, nice meetup, people.
I knew it would come back.
Yeah, me too.
The criteria is getting tighter and tighter.
I love it. All right, guys. Anything else from you, Brian, Kevin? Awesome.
No, that's great. Thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Very grateful for the time and muscling through that migraine. Thank you. Hopefully the baby sleeps through the night tonight.
Yeah, I know. That'll be great. That'll
Brian,
be great. So.
Glad to have you here too.
Yeah, Brian.
Homeboy
Get well, Brian.
Day 5 of COVID watch.
Day 5.
2020. So COVID's still a thing, guys. Awesome. Well, thank you. We again, we meet every second Tuesday of the month, mostly on Zoom. We're looking to do something in person in the summertime. Brian is very hell-bent on a summertime soiree, is what he's been calling it, and I'm going to keep using it. So check social media. We'll be posting things. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will see you next month.
Oh, one last thing. Can you, Paolo, do you want to drop your information in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
That would be, I'm sure people would like to reach out to you.
Or you can go back to that QR code that he had from before that was super magical. So.
Yeah, and basically my company is called Radiant Storage. And it's just my first name. So it's just Powell@radiantstorage.com. And yeah, happy to send you kind of, if you're interested, just let me know, hey, I'm interested in your list, or being a partner, being a joint venture partner with you. Just send me that and I'll send you my link. Go from there.
Cool. Pal, I got a referral for you as well. My boy Fuad, apparently he's looking at a self-storage unit that's at $3.3 per square foot capita. So
okay. Perfect.
We'll see. I mean,
that's awesome.
He's a youngster. I asked him, he didn't show up today, so I'll put you in contact with him.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.